Thank you, mate. And a big thank you to everybody that's joined this call. I just, by way of background, if I can, Terry and I have known each other now for, I'd say, well over 15, 20 years, having had a long association through both of our journeys in junior sport, specifically basketball down at the Southern Basketball Association. So the basketball world is not a foreign landscape for Terry, and more so, he's had an incredible path himself professionally that's led him into some of the biggest sporting clubs in this country at the back end, and so I feel really privileged to be able to present Terry to the basketball. Oh, sorry about that. I feel really privileged to be able to present Terry on behalf of Melbourne United to the basketball community. And to that end, I guess I'll just share a little bit of a background as to why we're doing this. We feel, and Kylie, our general manager of community, is also on the call. We feel a tremendous desire, tremendous need, if you like, to do everything we can to help the basketball community in any way we can, in good times and in bad. We've been on quite a journey at NBL level with Melbourne United over 7 years, and we've enjoyed it unbelievable support from the participation franchise and so many of the people connected to the game, and so we absolutely feel a sense of responsibility to pay back whenever we can, and this is one of those times in talking to Terry and listening to some of the great work that he's doing. Led by governing bodies in other sports. He's doing an amazing job in AFL and netball and really helping clubs at all levels get to the bottom of this whole planning process in and amongst the COVID-19 and pandemic. And I felt that there was a gap in the market here that I didn't feel it was being addressed. Kylie and I speak to various people in the community, and we hear too often the sense of frustration in the isolation that everybody might be feeling at this point in time. So I asked Terry if he wouldn't mind coming on and sharing with those that were interested some insights and take everybody on a journey with the view that if it's helpful at all and people want to continue talking to Terry, then they certainly can do so. But that's the background. It's why we're doing this. We just really feel a real sense of commitment to the participation franchise. We want to see our sport back healthier than it's ever been before, and we want to play a role in any way we can. And I just highly endorse Terry and his team. So Terry, I'll hand it over to you, mate, to lead us through. And guys, at any time through Kylie, if you need anything from our club, please reach out to us. Hit us up direct. We're here. We're in business. We're open for business. We're going to get through this. And we're going to get through this together. So if there's anything you need from us as an NBL club, our doors are open, our ears are open, and we're only too willing to help you out along the way. Thanks, TD. I'll hand it over to you, bud.
Perfect. Thanks, Vince. Look, firstly, thanks again to Melbourne United for this opportunity. My background is professional sport, albeit AFL. I've been servicing community clubs for the last 5 years. And doing strategic plans. I never played a single game of basketball in my life, and Vince will know that. I've got 4 kids who played rep ball at the one time for about 7 or 8 years, so I've lived and breathed it and travelled around the countryside for a long time. I've done probably 10 to 15 strategic plans for different associations. I did a review for BA for Siebel, it was a few years ago, basically I interviewed all the Siebel clubs pretty much one-on-one. It was really about, and that's probably a journey that's moved on since then in terms of the chapter of Siebel and what's eventuated. So that's my background. And I'm a bean counter by trade, so my background's a bit technical minded, I suppose. So, and as I said, I worked under Jeffrey Kennett, Ian Dicker, Eddie Maguire, but nevertheless, I'm fortunate now. I've worked with 800 clubs one-on-one in the last 4 years. we've done this particular webinar, and we've tailored it for basketball today. Today will be 1,100 people that have sat in on this session in the last 2 weeks. So there's a real need. It's hitting a chord. It's a small piece of the big puzzle. It's interesting. In most sports, they don't allow you to coach unless you've got a minimum standard qualification. But some of my sporting organisations, you want to run the club, you need 0. Good luck, go your hardest. You're the last person standing. You're now the president. And there's really not one sport that's teaching our administrators on how to run a club. So that's really, I suppose, the gap that I came into play 5 years ago. We're now working in 14 sports consistently. In the last 2 weeks, we've had, you name it, probably 35, 40 sports, because we're dealing with outdoor recreation, not-for-profits and so forth. So that's sort of just setting the scene. Today, we're going to go through, there's some of the organisations that will hopefully come up that we've worked with that's literally in the last 3 weeks. As I said, it really probably should be provided, and I'm going to, thanks, Jono, we're just bringing that up now. So I'm going to bring it up. It's a lot to see, but I'm going to set the scene for you if you don't mind. So you won't see any numbers. I'm just going to highlight the two colours. The yellow is the assumptions that I'm asking your committee or your board to populate based on various scenarios. How much sponsorship you're going to collect, how long do you think the length of the season is going to be, how much rep fees will you get, and will door entry be impacted when we return to playing. The blue numbers are your prior year numbers or your current budget, whatever you feel has got more confidence in those numbers, right? So there's the blue, you can see my mouse, and the yellow. And I'm just going to jump out of there. There's 2 sheets. If you just see my mouse again, there's a revenue model down here, and there's expenses. So I'm going to just quickly go down through the revenue, right? So I'll just jump out of this, and now I'm going to hide these numbers. So it's going to, hopefully, you will walk you through this. It takes a few minutes. You'll see here, just bear with me. Here's some revenue. So domestic team entry, BJBL, senior rep, registrations, domestic and rep, canteen, presentation, apparel, grants, so school programs, outreach programs, tailored specifically for you can chop and change as you see fit. Sponsorship, fundraising. So there's some numbers of an actual association that we're plugged in, right? Then we're going to go to expenses. Let's go to expenses over here. This club turns over association turned over 2.5. It's got 800,000 employees. Player payments through their senior competition is 100, and coaches very similar. Equipment, ref fees, venue court hire. So it's basically, you can plug and play with this as you see fit, right? So it's a P&L, revenue on one, so down the bottom, a revenue and expenses. So what I'm going to go through and just show you how to use this, and we might even tape this today and send it out to the clubs. So let's say it's a 40-week, winter and summer season. Let's say best case scenario, unrestricted, it could be 20 weeks. Let's say sponsorship, we're probably going to be lucky to get 1 in 3. People's disposable income is going to drop off. Let's say it's 10 to 15% drop off. Registrations, half season, I'm hearing some of the registrations may drop off when you return. So half season means half registrations. So half income's gone, but could even drop off more than that. So let's say that's 40%. Fundraising is going to stop dead in its tracks. You can't do the big events or fundraising events because you can't get together in numbers. So you'll be lucky to get 40% of your fundraising. Half season door entry, 40%. Junior rep, let's say 40%, 50%. I'll just plug in some numbers, right? I'm just going through it. You can populate this as you see fit. Then I'm going to go through the assumptions for the expenses. We've got some salaries to pay. We may have to cut those salaries down to, instead of, if the centre's not open, we may have to just have staff on 1 day a week to keep the movement of the organisation. Some you might have to cut player payments down by, by, if it's half a year, by half payments. Coaches, half a year, half payments. Discretionary spend, you're going to have to cut out. There's some costs that are outside of your control. Some of your league fees and affiliation insurance, I don't think they're going to change dramatically from what I'm hearing. And your core business. So there's probably a dozen assumptions. Sorry, just bear with me. A dozen assumptions that I'll put in place. So I'm just going to go over to this front page. So you'll see here, this organisation was turning over 2.5, was making about $250,000. I'm just now going to, based on the assumptions we've just keyed in, this organisation will drop from here and it drops about 55%. Or if this ends up being a 15-week season, 15-week year, it drops to that. If it ends up being 10, I've just typed in the wrong cell by mistake, but you can play around with how you see fit. So let's say it might be 17 games. Some of my, and even if, I still think some of the junior reps and, I think some of the participation may drop off when they return, but it just shows a lot of my organisations' revenue is dropping 60 to 70%. That was a really rough go at it, right? So the key is populate your actual numbers, that blue, and then just key in your various hypotheticals. How long do you think the season's going to be? Is it going to be half a year? I'll just say one thing. Half year does not mean half revenue. That's a real misconception. And hence, we've just been through this process that showed there's more clubs who haven't done a budget post-COVID, which is a concern. I'd encourage everyone who's dialed into this session, the most important exercise you can put in place is this. Spend the 30 minutes to 60 minutes of populating the data, the prior year stuff, keying your assumptions, and it'll churn out a number for you. You can't plan clearly unless you know what's coming. 9 out of 10 of my clubs do not know what's coming. They've got a bit of an idea, but they think some people think it's 20 to 30% income. But when they hear 50 to 65, some of my stadiums, if they're shut completely, their revenue is going to just stop to a grinding halt, and massive concern. So that's sort of a model that has been tailored specifically for basketball. It can be applied to clubs and associations. And we're going to go through that. So they're the 5 we've touched on, right? So the first one, the Australian Sports Foundation. So the Australian Sports Foundation is a federal government body based out of Canberra that has been set up for the benefit of community sport to allow tax deductible donations. And basically, we're going to talk about how you as an organisation can benefit from this. We're going to touch on the prepayments and how the ASF can help with prepaid regos, memberships, and also sponsorship. So the first option, let's say that you're going to be down for an extended period of time. The first option, as Patrick Walker talks about, is to, okay, let's say someone's paid $500 or $200 for X. There might be an opportunity where that if there is no season, as an example, that if they agreed to leave the money with the club or the association, and that money goes to the ASF, that person who's made that original donation or contribution can get a tax receipt for that. So let's say you've banked 20 or 30 grand of domestic fees or rep fees. And the first question is, do you think you could leave that money with the club? And we'll get you a tax deductible donation. We'll get you a tax receipt pre-30th of June, so you can claim that as part of your tax return in 30th of June 2020. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is to carry the money forward to the next season. For some of my organisations have used that money to spend it on other things, and they may not actually have the cash flow to refund it. Now, the third option is the hardship clause, where obviously there would be some organisations who potentially will be refunding or have had to refund some, albeit it might be a minority. But they're the sort of the 3 steps, I suppose. We're going to touch on a directory. I talked about various sponsors. We might bring up a sample here, Jono. A lot of my organisations, and it's fair to say, yeah, go down to the right. Yeah, thanks, mate. And we'll go to the next up the top. Yeah, that first one. Thanks, mate. What we're going to do, it's fair to say a lot of my sporting organisations don't do sponsorship that well. Yeah, that's okay, mate. We'll leave it there. Yeah, and it's fair to say there's often, most organisations have 0 to 20 sponsors, and outside of the branding on some assets, some singlets, and a few big signage in stadiums, they don't really know what they're selling. And it's often, they're often pulling on favours, or there's some friendlies, people that are connected to the club and their kids are playing. But in terms of creating a vehicle that can retain and maintain the attention of the sponsor, regardless of whether there's a year or not, you can potentially create a vehicle like a directory promoting your partners. Now, every time I go somewhere, I always work out, first of all, if you've got 500 players, as an example, across all your different levels of sport, and some might be bigger or smaller, I'm going to use 500 as an example, and that might be domestic and rep. For every time you have a person involved, there's usually 2 or 3 other people that are mums or dads or grandparents that are coming and going during the year. So let's say your market's 500 times 3, so about 1,500 people. That has some commercial value that a lot of my associations aren't commercialising. And a lot of my sports, to be honest, most of my sporting bodies I deal with, when they sell sponsorship, there's a fair element of fresh air. There's a fair element of fresh air in some of the contributions in terms of what the value for money they're getting. And sometimes it's often seen as a donation. So I'm going to give you an example of a sport where they created a directory. And it didn't matter whether, I'm going to use my little community club. We've got 250 members times 3, 750 we market to. Our sponsorship stayed at about 60%, even though there's going to potentially be no season, because this is the vehicle they want to tap into. So this is literally a vehicle that promotes all their sponsors. And you'll see here, a lot of these organisations, they've got about 150 sponsors paying $250 to $500, even for this little directory. A lot of my organisations miss out on the $250 to $500 to $750 sponsors. They miss out on that area. This is a vehicle that if you're a small business, for $250 or whatever the number may be, it's just it's a directory of supporting those that support you, and it's a simple way of, so your bigger brands that pay more, pay the bigger numbers. But this organisation took their sponsorship in 12 months from 60 grand to 150 by introducing this vehicle, because they were selling an element of fresh air previously. So if you're worried about losing some of your sponsors, if you're worried about generating, I call just engagement in terms of continuing to promote this, and people are going to ask me, do you do it hard copy, you do it soft copy, you do it both, particularly when season does start again, you hand out both, and you do a digital version and you do a hard copy version. But we might jump out of there, but the sponsorship aspect is such an opportunity for my clubs. And here's all our contact details. If anyone, you can take a photo of that if you need to look. We've got a YouTube channel which has 100 videos of clubs we've worked with and their feelings and feedback about, I suppose, the impact that we have with them. And my background, as I said, I'm a bean counter by trade. I've worked in professional sport for 20 years. I think I've worked in as many community clubs as anyone. And I'm still in the trenches of my local club. So I'm going to start with, I've got Florinda. I'm going to say hello to you, Florinda. Florinda, where are you from?
I'm from Christian College in Geelong.
Oh, well, welcome.
Thank you.
How did you find today, Florinda?
Interesting. Couple of the things like the lottos and things like that we wouldn't be able to do as a school, obviously.
Yep.
but certainly the sponsorship with the ASF, I thought that was excellent. Didn't know anything about that. Certainly didn't know anything about the volunteers over 55. That's another plus for our group. I did like the directory of supporters, the sponsors directory. I thought that was excellent for us.
Yeah. And because often our sporting organisations, their sponsorship is a bit of fluff. There's a little bit of fluff to their sponsorship, and it's usually pulling on some friendlies. But thank you. Now, Brian, was it from a New Zealand perspective? I've got your take from a New Zealand perspective. Obviously, there was some Australian content there today. What was your feedback?
That part of it was really interesting, and just a pity some of our government representatives weren't listening, and they could work out some things there. But what I did find very interesting is that sponsor directory. My ears picked up for that, and that little bit of advertising, and I thought that was great. We do have a strategic plan, we have a business plan, we have all those in place and they're reviewed. In fact, just before going into lockdown here, it was reviewed at a board meeting. I am very interested in that, and if there was any other information down the track on growing your volunteer base, I find that it's a hard one. But they're out there. It's just how do we twist their arm?
We've got a separate webinar, Brian. We've got a separate webinar just on volunteer generation. It's acknowledgement, it's generation of new volunteers, and it often comes back to structure because most clubs are run by 3 or 4 people who do not a lot of the work. That might be. We're going to be potentially we could be doing some other stuff with Melbourne United. I've got Mark. Where are you from, Mark? Mark Winnett, is it?
From Perth in Western Australia, Terry.
Good on you, mate. And what was your takeout from today, mate? Who are you involved with?
With Willetton Tigers, biggest basketball association in Western Australia. Then, like you, I've had an AFL background for 15 years, so been in basketball for 2 as CEO here. And no, thanks, mate. It was really interesting. As I said, I like the business directory idea as well. We're pretty fortunate here. We've just put a new strategic plan. We're really well governed and managed at this club and well set up. But obviously, coming out the other side of COVID as the biggest association, is a concern as to what goes forward. So some really good tips for us today.
Terrific. Now, Jill, you mentioned Jill from New Zealand as well. Jill Bolger, is it? You there, Jill? I've just taken you off mute. Yeah, sorry, Jill.
I am here.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in.
I'm Brian's general manager, so he's pretty much covered most of which I think I would have spoken about. We've also got a Southern Sharks NBL franchise as well, so a lot of what's not applicable to our association, I think, certainly can be handed over to them. The fundraising and those 2 planning sheets at the beginning, I think are going to be really, really useful for us.
Yeah, perfect. Now, I'm happy to open up. We've just gone. Does anyone like to throw a question at us while we're here?
Yeah, feel free to take yourself off mute. And, if you got any questions or anything?
Or if anyone, is there any question? Sorry.
Yeah, Kate just asked a question. Are you able to send the PowerPoint of this?
We don't send the PowerPoint. Unfortunately, we don't, because we've been burnt a few times with other sports not doing the right thing. We're happy to send the high-level stuff, but we've been burnt. And I said it's sort of our business, and we've been developed this for a number of years. But
I do understand that. John almost finished my thing. I have 3 kids here, and I missed, I reckon, at least 20 minutes of it. One was having a meltdown about his schoolwork, actually. So I thought that I should have prioritised this.
Sorry, Kate. Well, Kate, send me an email, and I won't make it public, but I'm happy to. You just send me an email, and we can sort something out.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. It was mostly there's a chunk between I'll email this anyway. Everyone doesn't have to hear this, but there's a chunk there that I missed that I'm quite interested in.
That's okay. That's all right.
Cool.
Is there any questions in the chat room, Jono?
No, there was just Kate's. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. I think
Terry,
that's about it.
So,
Hi.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, Terry. It's Lana Cairns here. I'm from Berwick in Victoria. So I'm president of a domestic club who we've got 600 kids registered with us. So we're pretty big for domestic. And I'm also involved in on the board level. I'm secretary of the board for my association, being Casey Basketball.
Yeah.
So today's session for me, whilst I attended as president of my domestic club, was probably more relevant from an association level.
Yeah.
And I'm pleased, like I answered my questions from a domestic club, but I can say from an association level, we've got the strategic plan.
Yeah.
We do that one-page financial report every month.
Right.
We have done our budget. We've done our new, budgets for post-COVID and whatnot. But from a domestic point of view, what was really helpful today was more around that fundraising and sponsorship.
Yeah, perfect. I know the area very well, Lana. I'm from down that way.
Yes, I saw that, Coraline. So, yeah. But and in terms of the budgeting from a domestic club point of view, whilst we do have a budget in place each year, but it has been a bit hard to review until we know when we're going back.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of sponsors and that type of stuff. It's more about, the registrations and whatnot.
Yeah, I'd still encourage you to go through the process and do some hypotheticals. So that model, we'll send that out. And just populate some key assumptions. It takes about half an hour to do it. And, there's no right or wrong. It's like every budget's a guess, isn't it?
It is.
It's not no exact science to budgeting.
No, that's right.
So, no, look, I admire everyone who's here today because 99% of them are, there are some paid employees, but most of the people I'm dealing with are doing it for the love of it. And it's supposed to be fun. And it's supposed to be fun, by the way.
Yeah, most of the time.
Sometimes it's very good at sucking the life out of us, though.
It is.
And every club has pressure points, and most clubs have 2 or 3 major issues a year of something that happens that you think, oh, what do I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And you think, oh my God, sometimes it's like having a part-time, semi-part-time, full-time job, but guess what? Sometimes you don't get paid to do it. So it's just
absolutely.
And but anyway, I often think volunteering is a genetic condition. I think you get it from your mother and father, and it just flows down through the generations. And my mum and I'm fortunate. I work with, I think we've had 1,100 plus people sit in the last 2 weeks who've done these sessions, and a lot of good intention people out there just need some direction. And as I said, there's not one sport in Australia there's little bits and pieces, but no one's providing the education to our administrations. And I think, without pumping our tyres up, we teach organisations the how. A lot of the sporting bodies do the compliance, ticking the boxes and all that sort of stuff, but they don't teach you how to grow your membership, how to grow your grants, how to grow your volunteers, how to grow your sponsorship, how to grow your fundraising, they don't do that. And that's the gap. That is the biggest gap in our community sport. So again, good intention people bringing their skills, and I've seen a lot of highly successful people fail at running a community organisation, by the way, because they're juggling. They're juggling family, club and work, and particularly with the current crisis. Some people are steering their energies to save their business or put food on the table. And their community organisation is the third cab off the rank. That's a risk, And but again, that's sort of the role that we play and we fill, and sort of hope to do stuff like this. And this is one of our 7 series that we touch on. So, any other questions?
Yeah, a couple others of just Stephen and Kate both asked if you could touch on the 55 and over pre-pension thing just quickly.
Yeah, look, it's a federal government initiative. Look, I probably need a lot longer than that to go through it, but it was built around ensuring community, because most community organisations are run by 99.9% volunteers, and it's about tapping into it. It is a version of New Start allowance, and it is assets tested, but it's very generous assets test. It excludes the individual's house. It excludes the individual's superannuation, providing they don't have providing they, that's your dog, Jono, is it? Yeah, Jono's got his dog in the background. Where was
Sorry,
I?
my PA's going off.
Your PA.
Yeah.
I like it. And it's a very generous assets test, but it's look, there's a bit of some. If people want to email me, I can send you some details on that. But in terms of it's a bit, again, it's a bit like the Australian Sports Foundation. It's the best kept secret, and it's there is a bit of paperwork getting through the process, because you have to get an approval as a not-for-profit incorporated association through Centrelink to get this done. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get through the process. Once you do the process, the great thing about this initiative is there is no cap to the number of people you can have. So you could have, it's particularly, some of my organisations, whether they're bowling clubs or golf clubs, and got the perfect demographic for people that are 55 and over to tap into that network. And again, it's such a missed opportunity. But I emphasise there is some red tape, but I've got that many organisations that use it. Once they get through the red tape, and some people will, you've got to go in, you've got to fill out paperwork, you've got to get approval. And as I said, there's no cap. And the person has to work 30 hours a fortnight. The person, that's 15 hours a week. And the organisation signs off on it every 3 months. And and you can work with more than one organisation at the same time. So you could work for, if it's a cricket football club as an example, you could work for the cricket club in the summer and the football club in the winter, or something like that. And you can spread your time between charity and sport. So it could be, you can work with more than one organisation. The money doesn't go anywhere near the not-for-profit, or it goes to the individual, who then is obligated to support the club. So again, it's normally at 20. When I do my volunteer, Brian talked about volunteers and generation of volunteers. Normally when I do my strategic planning session, I spend about 20 minutes just on that. So it's a big, big topic, but email me and I can probably forward on some more details. How are we going? One other, John?
That was all that's come through. Just a couple of thank yous, and yeah.
All right.
Unless anyone else has got some questions or anything.
If you've got any other questions, fire away. If you felt today was a value, maybe send Kylie, because Kylie's a star behind the scenes, quiet achiever, and maybe send Melbourne United a thank you, for putting on this session. If you felt it was a value. If you don't, then done my best. So hopefully it's been good value for everyone. So I think that's about enough for me. Thanks to my young mate, Jono, who's my right-hand person. He keeps me on track. And over and out for me. So thanks, everybody.
Kylie, did you want to say anything before?
Yeah, I will actually.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
I just wanted to, on behalf of the club, thank you, Terry, for putting on this webinar for everyone, and also Jono for helping out with all the technical stuff. I'm sure everyone's got some ideas and some information to think about now, so which is terrific. It's getting everyone thinking, and you're all sort of on the front foot just by being involved in this webinar to start with. So we'll get some extra information to you, and in the meantime, if you have any more questions or queries, please feel free to send either Terry or I an email. Thank you.
Over and out.
Thanks, Kylie.
Have a good weekend, everybody.